Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and today I wanted to talk about presser foot lifting. You know, there's so many different ways that we can do it. Of course, there's the old-fashioned way where you reach in the back of the machine and you lift the lever up and down and magically the presser foot goes up and down. Well, if you have a BERNINA with the built-in dual feed, you don't have a presser foot lifter back there. And I wanted to talk to you about all of the different ways on the various models that you can lift, lower, adjust, ease up just a little bit, and all of those things. And one of those techniques is called hover. So let's go over here at the machine and see what this is all about.
Well, let's have a look with the basic, most easiest thing that we are all probably pretty used to using if we've ever had a BERNINA. And the feature that I'm talking about is that knee bar that raises and lowers the presser foot, better known as the BERNINA freehand system. Let's hear how cool it is from our friend Tiffany Pratt.
Another thing I love is this hands-free system where you're basically high-fiving your BERNINA with your knee and it lifts the presser foot so you have completely hands-free sewing, which I totally dig.
So let me explain a little bit about how the BERNINA freehand system works. So I'm going to take off my foot. So when I am normally sewing, the feed dogs are up like this, right? You can kind of feel that they are. When I use the knee lever to lower the presser foot, I high five it with my knee, like Tiffany says, and you can see that the feed dogs drop. And now when I take my first stitch, they're going to come up again. Okay? But the idea with really like squeezing my leg all the way to the right on my bar and dropping those feed dogs is that you get the maximum clearance under the foot like this. So you get a lot of extra space. And then the feed dogs don't drag on the bottom of your fabric, especially if it's like slippery or fabric that easily pulls or whatever. However, that's when we're dropping the feed dog for the first time. So for instance, if I'm just bumping this a little bit, the feed dogs do not drop, okay? But when I start to hyper move it, they're going to drop. Now, this might happen when you're doing applique and you're trying to go around various shapes. This could happen because you're trying to get over a big bump of fabric. Whatever the case is, I just wanted to show you how that works, that nothing is wrong when I initially raise my presser foot and the feed dogs drop. They're going to come up when you start sewing. Hope this makes sense.
And just be mindful that the freehand system is not just on the machines that have the automatic presser foot up down. This is on our BERNINAs for a very long time, and it works pretty much the same on all of those BERNINAs. The current line BERNINAs are these, which would be the BERNINA 335. You just have to add the knee bar, but the mechanism is in the machine. The 435, which once again has the mechanism, but you just need to add the knee bar, which is available through your BERNINA dealer, including us, BERNINA of Naperville. And any machine 475 and higher comes standard with the BERNINA freehand system. And some of the machines have the area where you can install the housing, but they didn't come with the housing, and there's a kit available. So when you bring your machine in for service and you don't have the freehand system, we may actually be able to install that for you. So the next thing we want to look at is the presser foot up down button. Now that's located on the front of your machine with the little icon of the presser foot up down button. And this is simple. This is what a lot of you that don't realize that you have a freehand system and you just go to this. And the one thing that's nice about this, it's right there on the front of the machine and you can clearly see it. But the thing that I personally don't like about it is that I have to take my hands off my work and literally press the button up and down. No big deal, but you know, each person sews the way that they want to sew. Now, with any of the buttons that are on the machine, the presser foot up down button included, we can actually program it. And programming it is where we can actually press the button to put the foot down and it will still bounce up a little bit so we can make some final adjustments with the foot, or we can change it so that it really clamps down on your work so that once you put the foot down, you can kind of rearrange things, grab your seam ripper, grab a stiletto, whatever, and that foot is going to hold your fabric on under the foot of the machine. So let's see how we would program this. Much like on any of your electronic devices, the Berninas have a little gear, cog and wheel thing here that represents settings. So we press that, and then we're in the sewing side for this, so we're going to go to the straight stitch and zigzag button. Then we have some options here, and one of them being the finger touching the buttons, and this indicates programming the external buttons. There's a lot that we can do. We'll get into those in just a minute, but this is the one in particular that we're looking for, which is the presser foot up-down button. Now, by default, when you get your Bernina brand new out of the box, it's going to be popping up 2 millimeters, and you can see that there. But sometimes I have to tell you, when I get my new Berninas, I change this to 0, just like that, because I want the foot to clamp down when I use the button. So with that in mind, I select this, and now when I put my presser foot down, nothing's moving under that fabric. I do want to warn you a little bit. If we're using a 1D, like you see on our machine here, the 1D foot clamps down, no worries on the 770, but the actual presser foot is still above the foot, just above the feed dogs just a little bit. So what's clamping down on the fabric is that little dual feed, the Bernina dual feed claw. If you have a Bernina 5 series, the whole foot still clamps down, including the dual feed and the foot. Now, on your 770, if you're actually using a 1C foot, the whole pad of the foot is going to be engaged tightly with the feed dogs and your fabric. Going back into programming mode, we're going to talk about another thing that we can program, but we have to look at this screen right here. I mentioned this in the intro, and we're going to talk about hover. Now, hover will not matter how it's programmed if you don't engage your needle down feature. And of course, your needle down feature is found in the top left corner, right to like the top left here of your presser foot bird's eye view. And when the needle's down, we have options. So now that we have our needle down engaged, let's go over to our settings. We're going to go back to our sewing settings, which is indicated, like I said, with the straight stitch zigzag icon. And then we're going to go back to our fingers that are pointing to the buttons. So there's our needle down icon that matches the one we engaged. And in this selection, we have no hover. This is how the machines come by default. Then we have medium hover and tall hover. So let's just see what happens when we select what I like to call little hover. So we're going to stitch, and then we just sew, and then when we stop the machine, the needle lands down, our presser foot is going to bounce up just a little bit. And when we're doing like quilting, weight fabric, some applique, things like that, this little bit of hover is just perfect to turn our fabric side to side without having to use the knee lever or that external presser foot up-down button. If we go in to our hover a lot, which is this last choice here, that presser foot is going to raise a lot. And this one is one I do not use very often at all. However, if you were doing a lot of sewing on super thick fabric, maybe thick quilts, doing a binding on something super thick or lots of denim, I don't even know. I'm sure that you are sewing things I could never dream of, but this might be one that you want because the presser foot, when you stop with your needle in the down position, is going to raise to the highest possible level that it can. So Bernina is wonderful, and I can't express this enough because of all of the options you get as the user. You may have noticed that you can also put your presser foot down simply by starting to sew. Now, if you just press on the foot control like you're at the Indy 500, it's going to put the presser foot down and start sewing straight away. If you just gently press your toes down on the foot control at the thick part of the foot control and lift your toes up, it will simply just drop your presser foot, and then you press again with your toes to drive. And this is very helpful in conjunction with programming the heel tap of your foot control if you choose to not have the heel tap version of your foot control be needle up down. So we did make a video on how to program the heel tap on your machine. And please watch that if you want to know like everything that you can do with it. But what I want to show you is something that you can do. It's not something I use all the time, but it is valuable for different applications. So in your settings, in your sewing settings, before you get to the finger that's programming all the buttons here, there is a heel touching that smaller part of the wedge shape of the foot control. And this is how you can program your heel tap feature. Or I think in some circles, Bernina's calling this the kickback feature. Whatever you want to call it, it's that little sweet spot on your foot control that makes the needle go up or the needle go down in like a half step. So if the needle is landing up and you press this part of the foot control, it's going to put the needle down. And if the needle's landing down and you press that part of the foot control, it's going to bring the needle up. So this is what the default setting of this looks like. But if we touch this heart button, we can make a knot, we can make it cut, and we can raise the presser foot. I don't want it to cut, I simply want it to raise the presser foot. And we can tell what it's doing because that button is the thing that has the white ring around it. So see if I press my pretzel dispenser here, which is actually knotting, not pretzels, it puts the white ring around it. Press the cutter, puts the white ring around that, and then I don't want that, so I click it again to deselect it, and then I don't want the pretzel, so I deselect that. So this is what I have selected, and subsequently, pressing the heel part of my foot control now will bring my presser foot up. And one last thing, by default, the little scissors button, the thread cutter, actually cuts and raises the presser foot. So that's one more option for you.
All right, well, I hope that you have some options now. There's certainly some time-saving options. There are some tried and true ways like that Bernina freehand system, right? And let's not underestimate the power of programming our foot control. Well, if you want to see more tutorials like this one, don't forget to check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Happy presser foot lifting.